is Hector Carcamo. I'm an entomologist at the Research Center, and this is Dr. Andoni Metanopoulos.
Yes.
Close enough? Okay. Whoever can say the last name will get a door prize at lunchtime. Okay, so we are replacing the speaker that could not make it, Bob Winters, and also I guess Bob Lockshaw. There was a session called Try, and I don't know if we can call it Try again. Try to grow canola as weedy as this and see what happens to the flea beetles. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take half of the group and we will discuss flea beetle management and seed treatments over there. And then Andoni will talk about seed treatments and bee health over here. And there are candies in this bag, so whoever asks questions, I guess we give them a candy. Okay, why don't we start with a quiz? So we're talking about flea beetles in canola. What is the nominal threshold for flea beetles in canola? Who would like to answer? And I guess then you can pick a candy. What is the nominal threshold for flea beetle in canola? Any? Present or absence? Anybody would like to venture a guess?
2 to 3.
2 to 3.
Per cotyledon.
2 to 3 flea beetles per cotyledon.
25%.
There we go.
Oh yeah.
Here we go.
But you also get a consolation.
Yay. Your son.
Yes, that's right. So the just before what is the definition of a threshold? We should just quickly review two important things about thresholds. One is the crop stage, and the other one is the level of damage or the numbers of insects, right? So for flea beetles in canola, the critical stage is the cotyledon, and rightly the threshold is 25%. That is the nominal threshold. And when we talk about nominal thresholds, we're really saying that we actually don't have scientific data to support that threshold. It's what is used in practice, but we actually haven't done the research to support that threshold, and this is why we have this study here, is to attempt to validate that threshold. And an economic threshold of 25% is really a warning, or if you like, a trigger point. 50% is actually closer to what the plant can withstand. So we say 25% because by the time you actually start spraying, if you have a very hot day, you could in fact have 50% of defoliation on those cotyledons. So that's why we say 25% is the action threshold. So this canola trial that we have here is an attempt to validate nominal thresholds, and it was actually requested by the Canola Council, and a colleague of mine in Manitoba, Dr. Alejandro Costamagna, he is leading this study, and we have sites in Beaver Lodge, Lethbridge, Vauxhall, and we have 2 sites also in southern Manitoba. I don't think we have anything in Saskatchewan. But we have this identical trial in Vauxhall also. It was planted on the same day, on 29th of May, which was quite late for planting canola, but I thought it was actually a good enough date to attempt to answer the question, because flea beetles are usually worst on fields that are planted late. We have some data from several years of work that we did in southern Alberta, in Lacombe, and also in Beaver Lodge, and we could actually show quite consistently that the later you seed, especially after the middle of May, then you are more likely to have damage by flea beetles. The plots that were seeded earlier, the flea beetles actually were not a problem, and that has to do with the biology of the flea beetles. Anybody knows the species of flea beetles that we have in southern Alberta? Just the common name, you don't have to give me the Latin name. Yes, crucifer flea beetle. What about northern Alberta? What species is the dominant one there? Stripe flea beetle. Wow, you guys are really on speed with your entomology. Good job. Yeah, it's an interesting situation in more humid areas of the prairies because the crucifer flea beetle, this shiny black beetle, was the dominant one, and the striped flea beetle was not as common. But nowadays there's a shift in species composition. The striped flea beetle is now the dominant species in northern and central areas. In the south, we have very few striped flea beetles. If you go actually as far as Vulcan, Calgary, you start seeing more of the striped flea beetles. And there's two important things about these species for these flea beetles. One is that the crucifer flea beetle is kind of a late riser. They actually wake up from their overwintering late. So if you plant your canola early, you can escape it. In the striped flea beetle is the opposite. They actually wake up earlier. So if you plant your canola early in the north, you actually have more damage. And the second very important aspect is that the striped flea beetle is immune to the neonicotinoid insecticide, so they are not affected by it. So there is quite a bit of damage that can occur in northern areas where you have this striped flea beetle. So spraying is not uncommon. So validating economic thresholds is a relevant question. Here is we have 6 treatments. Only 2 of them have an insecticide seed treatment. One has Helix, and the other one has Helix and Lumiderm. And then the other 4 don't have anything on them, not even fungicide, because we actually were quite late in getting the funding, and it was very difficult to get untreated seed. So it's just bare seed, and you can take a look at the plots. And if you can see a difference in the plots, please point it out to me, because I haven't been able to see it yet. We have done the ratings yet. We have done the rating for flea beetles, and unfortunately for us, I guess from an entomologist's point of view, we have very little damage by flea beetles. The average damage for the first rep here is probably about 5%, so very far below. We were hoping to spray insecticide at 15%, then 25%, and then 45%. But because the damage was less than 5%, then this study is, from our point of view, is a failure. I guess it's good news if you are a grower. You don't have flea beetle pressure.
How far can you get them to move in a test plot?
That's a good question. We don't know. They're quite mobile, and they can both walk or jump, and they can also fly. I wouldn't be too surprised if they could actually fly several hundreds of meters. That would be a very, very good question to answer, to do a study to see if they can fly. A lot of insects, like even if they're small, they can actually fly a long distance. And sometimes even for cabbage seaport weevil, there is a suggestion that they can fly up to 2 or 3 kilometers, which is, I guess, a long distance for such a small insect. But I forgot what I was going to say about this trial. So this trial didn't work, but there's some interesting things. Remember I said that we also planted it in Vauxhall at the same time. In Vauxhall, we have been trapping about those sticky cards that you can see there. There's actually, now there's about 50 flea beetles that we can find. In Vauxhall, we only find about 10 flea beetles there. But I think the timing was really important, and also what surrounds your crop is important. In Vauxhall, we planted it in the middle of a cereal field. Here we are surrounded by canola. So when the plants were at the seedling stage, when we had the peak flea beetle numbers, the flea beetles were quite happily eating the canola around. And flea beetles are extremely good at smelling the compounds emitted by brassicaceae plants, like cabbage plants, canola, mustard. They can smell that from very far away. I don't know how far, but probably hundreds of meters, if not kilometers. And then they can get onto the plants. So because we were surrounded by canola here, they really just stayed and fed on the canola. Now that the plants are at the seedling stage and have more foliage, we can see that the flea beetles are here. I guess a take-home message from this is that if you have canola at this seedling stage, when you have enough true leaves and you have flea beetles, unless you have clouds of flea beetles, you don't need to worry about them, because the damage that they cause is going to be of no consequence to the crop at this stage. It's only when the crop is at the cotyledon stage that it's vulnerable to flea beetles. Another question that we are attempting to answer with this study that we just started this year is what landscape attributes and weather parameters affect flea beetle populations And part of this study, and this is the main area of expertise for this professor in Manitoba, Alejandro Costamagna, his main interest is landscape ecology, which aims to quantify attributes of the landscape. So this year we have 12 fields in southern Alberta, and there's going to be several fields in other provinces. For this study, there's also collaborators in Saskatchewan and also Manitoba, obviously. So we expect to have something like 30 or 40 fields throughout the prairies, and our plan is to document every patch within a 2-mile radius of each canola field. We're going to document what is around it, what kind of crop, whether there's more canola, cereals, forest, whether it's water bodies, roads, urban developments, whatever we find in the vicinity of those fields, and we are going to construct a model to see if we can learn something about populations of flea beetles in relation to the habitats. I suspect that distance to the last canola field planted the previous year could be important, because that could be a source of flea beetles for this year, and depending on how far they can fly. The other aspect of this study is to look at the weather variables, and there is a private company that is part of the research network that is looking at modeling weather, looking at temperature, rainfall, and see if we can actually predict populations of flea beetles at the local level. And I think that is the key information that we need to be able to say to a grower at the end of the fall. It would also be nice to have data on the overwintering conditions, because if you have a very harsh winter, that could also reduce populations by probably up to 50%, but that's getting too late for the farmer to make a decision on what kind of seed to grow. But I think if we have this information, 1 minute left, I think that would be the key aspect to say to a grower, you are in an area where there's low risk to flea beetles, so you don't need to be worrying about flea beetle management. Whereas on the other hand, you are surrounded by this type of landscape attributes that contribute to having a higher risk of flea beetles, and then hopefully that information could be of some use. Any questions? Anybody would like more candies? That kind of question actually is applicable to other insects like the pea leaf beetle, where citronellite might be the best solution to manage that pest. But you also need to have that local ability to forecast the population of that pest. Questions?
Anybody have any questions on bees or?
No?